Now, Washington Mornings on the Mall.
105.9 FM.
And AM 630.
WMAL.
8:07 on WMAL. Happy Thursday to you. Brian Neiman, Brian Wilson with you in Washington, D.C. 105.9 FM, AM 630 WMAL, where Washington comes to talk. Peter Schiff is on the line. He is the president of Euro-Pacific Capital, an economist. You see him on TV all the time.
Right, yeah.
Widely credited with predicting the crash in 2008.
There weren't many people who saw it coming, but he did.
He did in his book called Crash Proof. He has a new book out called The Real Crash. Good morning, Peter. How are you?
I am okay. How are you?
First of all, congratulations. I understand. I know you're a syndicated radio host. You're also going to be taking over for G. Gordon Liddy, who has decided to retire. So congratulations on that.
Yeah, thanks. The G-Man, I guess, is calling it quits. And so I've been doing this show now for a little over a year, and I'm just going to just be moving into his time slot. So hopefully we'll pick up a lot of his former stations. All
right, your book, The Real Crash, the title of it, concerns
Scary.
me.
Yes, it makes me very nervous.
If it is the real crash, does that make 2008 the fake crash,
like
or
the warm-up
the
crash?
practice run?
Yeah, or sometimes I call it the overture.
Okay.
To the opera that's about to unfold.
So
it's a bit of a tragedy, but we're going to have to live through it.
Well, what worries you, and is it connected to 2008 still?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's just a natural progression. Although, if you go back to my original book, which is Crash Proof, How to Profit from the Coming Economic Collapse, the economic collapse that I was referring to is the same one that I'm referring to in the real crash. It's just that a lot of people thought the collapse was what we had in '08, but it wasn't. I mean, I made that clear in my book, but people forget that. I did forecast that the housing bubble would burst, that we would go into the worst recession since the Great Depression, that we'd have trillion-dollar budget deficits and double-digit unemployment. But that wasn't the collapse. What I was afraid of was that the government was going to try to artificially stimulate the economy with massive money printing, trying to reflate the bubble, and that it was going to be the consequence of that was going to bring on the real crash.
Well,
I said that we weren't going to die from the disease, but from the government's cure.
Well, Peter, yesterday the market surged almost 300 points on speculation that Ben Bernanke was going to do just the thing that you've talked about.
Well, that's what he's going to do. That's been his plan all along. The U.S. economy is completely addicted to cheap money. Without it, it collapses. But with it, it doesn't actually grow. It's a phony stimulus high. That's why there's no real jobs being created. That's why the standard of living of most people is falling, because the economic growth isn't real. In order to get real economic growth, we have to allow a real recession to run its course. We have to allow interest rates to go up. We have to let the economy restructure so that we can have real growth. But the government refuses to allow us to swallow that medicine because they say it tastes bad. So we're denied the only cure that will work, and we get sicker and sicker on this government stimulus.
So what do you want? You want the Federal Reserve to say, hey, we're going to let rates go up? But a lot of people always point to the Federal Reserve and Ben Bernanke, but isn't it ultimately the governments around the world, not just here in the United States, that have to do the real decision-making, which is spending less money?
Well, politicians, in many parts of the world have to, come to terms with that reality and level with the voters that they've bought over the years by making promises that their taxpayers can't keep. So this is not uniquely an American problem. It's a bigger problem here because we've financed all this spending with so much borrowing, and the short-term nature of that borrowing is such that when interest rates go up, our economy implodes or the government has to default. It's one or the other. We can't afford to pay the interest on the national debt, let alone the principal, when rates go to levels that they need to be. So we can't solve these problems without some very difficult short-term consequences. But instead, we just get the money printing, inflation. They call it QE, but it's basically just inflation. And that's not going to grow the economy. It's going to make prices go up. It's going to undermine our living standards. But yes, if we print enough money, the stock market will go up. But who cares if it goes up? Because we're pricing it in dollars that have less value.
All right, so what would you do? What would you do with your money? What do you suggest people do if they want to try to, protect themselves for the future?
Well, first of all, buy the money that that central banks can't create, or Ben Bernanke can't print. So own gold and silver. I think that's a lot better than owning dollars or euros. And yeah, I like investing in companies, in stocks. I just think that you're better off investing abroad. I think that we have too many problems that are going to be plaguing the U.S. economy for years and years to come, and it's going to undermine real corporate earnings and the inflation-adjusted stock market return. So you got to look out to the emerging markets, Asian economies, look at some of the countries that have a lot of natural resources that will benefit from expanding economies abroad, rather than the ones that are going to suffer from a contraction here in the U.S.
Are we better off than other countries, though? I mean, is the United States in better position than what's going on in Europe? I know there's been a lot of concern about India lately and even China, that they're not going as well as people seem to think that they are.
No, I mean, there are certain countries in the world that are, potentially in worse shape than America, but not many. And certainly if you look at Europe as a whole, America is in much worse shape. I mean, the 50 U.S. states and the federal government are in worse financial shape than the 17 nations that share the euro currency. So we've got bigger problems. The difference is that Europe is having to deal with their problems right now, and we're not. I mean, actually, we're getting some extra time to make our problems worse as the global markets are focused on Europe, and therefore they might actually do something about their problems. We're not. But ultimately, we're going to have the same scrutiny as Europe, and we're going to have even more dire consequences because, as I said, we have borrowed more money than the Europeans, and we are less able to pay it back.
All right, you know politics very well. Do you think that you could actually implement what you say needs to happen and to change the system, really, the way it is right now, and actually win re-election? Okay, you could get put into power. Republicans could win the White House. They could take control of the Senate. They can take control of the House, already have control of the House, and actually implement things where you're going to put us on the right path, and it would make things very tough and actually go through a recession, as you say. If you did that, could you actually win re-election?
I don't think it matters. I think the key is to do the right thing, whether or not you get reelected. And if people do it right away, senators have a 6-year term. They might be able to get reelected. Some of the House members, it might be a little tougher because it might take a little bit more than 2 years to see the light at the end of the tunnel. But we've got to put people in office that don't care about getting reelected. They care about the country.
Yeah, but how's that going to happen?
I understand that. I agree with you on that. But here's the thing: the reality is well, the American public, we're schizophrenic. We go from one side to the next. See 2008, now 2010. Who knows where we're going? If you actually do these things and there's pain, do you have enough faith in the American people that they will say yes, this is the right path to go on?
We have to endure it.
Well, some of them, and hopefully we can get a critical mass. But we're going to get pain either way. It's not like we're going to escape the pain. In fact, it's going to be much more excruciating if we continue down this path. And so I think at some point, it's going to get so hot, right, that the people are going to realize that something different has to be done. Because when you're saying people just go Republican, they go Democrat, and they will go back Republican, it's because it's all the same. It's the same strategy. Yes, the players are a little bit different, and the rhetoric is a little bit different, but the philosophy is basically the same. It's big government, it's more spending, it's more subsidies, it's encourage consumption, right? It's prop up Wall Street. Neither of the parties. I mean, you had Ron Paul that came up in the Republican Party offering something different, but he wasn't able to capture more than maybe 10 or 15% of the vote. Now, I mean, he got more than he did in 2008, and so obviously we're moving in the right direction, but we've still got a lot of progress to make.
All right, Peter. Good to have you on, I think. Although makes me more worried as always.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on, guys. I am testifying in Congress later today, so they'll have one more chance to ignore me.
Well, I'm sure a lot of members.
Give it to them straight there, Peter.
I'm sure a lot of members of Congress are listening to you right now. So thanks again, Peter Schiff, author of the book "The Real Crash."